Everybody, today's video we're going to take a look at the strength of Smith of Kitava from the second patch into the third patch of Path of Exile 2. I just want to cover my bases for why I think the class is fun to play, and make sure that I'm not tricking anybody into playing the class without realizing what its strengths and weaknesses are, and why you'd want to play this over something else. So to start out with, this was pretty well documented at the start of 0.3, but it was done so through the use of tier lists, where we looked at 0.2, Smith of Kitava was 15% played, really strong, and then moving into 0.3, nowhere to be seen. It's fallen all the way down to 0.6% played. Titan got a few tweaks, and like Titan's a little bit more of it got buffed rather than slightly nerfed. But in my opinion, this fall off is mostly due to content creators. It is less due to the actual power of the ascendancy. So behind me, we've got a snapshot from Dawn of the Hunt, which was the second patch for PoE2. If we click on Smith of Kitava and just pull up any one of these characters in like the top 100, we're going to notice that they're using a belt called Inferno Clasp. It came with +5 maximum fire res, and I would bet, I haven't done this, I haven't pre-watched, if I click on any of these Smiths, they're going to have it on. Smith of Kitava's, one of their biggest strengths is that you can get maximum all elemental res through fire res. So as you kind of go through the process of getting your defenses up, you can kind of see that a few of these Smiths didn't actually have it, but going into Inferno Clasp was just an easy way to kind of hit that breakpoint. Now, in the patch notes for 0.3, if we look for Inferno Clasp, we can see that it was removed from the game, later to be introduced. So already, Smith of Kitava is now missing out on 5 maximum fire res that they could have gotten from the belt, as well as a really easy way to corrupt on 3% maximum fire res onto that same belt, because it's a really common unique. So technically you could get +8 from a single item. That item is removed. You can still get the corrupt on rare belts or other unique belts if you want, but it's just going to be much less common. While we're in the patch notes, let's go to Smith of Kitava and see what else got removed. So a new node has been added, which is 50% of armor applies to elemental damage. This was a major shift in how GGG wanted warriors to handle elemental damage, and it removed another +5% maximum fire res. So again, in the easiest and like most, if you're a casual player, this is how you're going to get a bunch of fire res. GGG essentially removed 13% maximum fire res of the 15% that you need to hit 90% all, right? So from a really casual player perspective, this was an insane nerf. And when a lot of players were talking about this, that's how it came off, right? Okay, they're nerfing Smith of Kitava. But when you look at it from like an end game perspective, you were already able to get overcapped on maximum fire res very easily. Something that wasn't mentioned in the patch notes was they also nerfed unnatural resilience. So this is now capped at 2% maximum fire res. If we change the tree back to 0.2 and take a look at what it used to do, it was 1% maximum fire res per 40% uncapped fire res. And what you could do is go up to like 200% or 240% to gain up to 4 or 5% maximum fire resistance. Even 6%, you could get it this really high. So in general, the nerfs from 0.2 to 0.3 made it so that it was way harder for you to obtain maximum fire resistance from passives, from the ascendancy, from items. And I'm not saying that that isn't a nerf and that it shouldn't maybe reduce the likelihood of most players playing Smith of Kitava, because it does make it harder to make your character that tanky, right? Before it was very, very, very easy. Now it's just easy. So like, that's the part that I want to go over in this video. I'm currently in SSF Hardcore, and I'm at 87% all elemental res. We just hit a belt corrupt that got us like really close. I'm working on getting 2 socketables for my gloves that would put me up to 89, and then we already have a corrupt on a chest piece to get us to 90. So I'm already we're around like level 93, able to cap all of my resistances and solo self-found, no trade, no nothing, on a character that at any point could die, right? So it isn't as hard as you think. This is going to change probably going into 0.4. Essences are really strong for crafting in the current patch, so maybe that'll cause issues, but like you can't craft on maximum fire res. So everything I'm talking about right now is done through getting drops, making sure that you're aware of all the options to you, and then waiting to switch your ascendancy points into the maximum elemental resistance pathway until you've got enough of that stat. All right, so let's get back to the nerfs. Already we've seen it's like around, let's say it's just over 15% maximum fire resistance was removed. They've added a few others, but for now, let's just see it as a flat chop. You were still already able to get like over not the 15% needed really easily. So to me, this isn't too crazy. Leather bindings, notable, got nerfed a little bit, but I do not value maximum life per second. I value leech. This is something that may change in future patches. And then everything else just doesn't matter. So really, when we're talking about why would Smith go from like 15% played to 0.6% played, none of this makes any sense to me. For that reason, right? If you are only playing a class because you can click, you can level that class to end game, you can buy one belt and click one passive on the passive tree and hit 90% all elemental res, then I don't know, like that's not the person I guess I want to be making these videos for. When it's too easy to hit these breakpoints that are like game changing, if you have 90% so all maximum elemental res from like day one of a league, your character is way stronger than somebody with 75% max all res. And we can do the math real quick. If you had 75% and you were taking, 100 damage, you do the reverse. So it's 100 times 1 minus 0.75. You end up taking 25 damage. If you have 90 all res, that's going to be 100 times 1 minus 0.9, which is going to be 10 damage. And what is the difference between 10 and 25? It's actually 2.5 times more damage taken. So when you're going from 75 to 90 max elemental res, you're taking 2.5 times less damage. And if your plan was to pick an ascendancy that lets you do that with like 2 purchases in softcore, yeah, I don't know. I don't like playing the game like that, right? I enjoy the progression of a character. I enjoy seeing the benchmark or the breakpoint of 90 and then slowly building up to it. I don't want to just blink and then have it be completed. So a lot of these nerfs, I don't know if they were valid, but like when they initially released Smith, I don't think they took all of this into account and realized how easy it was going to be to hit 90%. So when it comes to my current character, we're at 87. And how are we getting that? We are getting 3% from belts. I have a rare shield, and we're getting 3% there. You could get another 2% if you use the Rise of the Phoenix unique shield. But for now, we're up to 6%. And that is it on gear. We're then getting 2% from Unnatural Resilience. We're getting 1% from Crystalline Resistance. And then we are getting another 3% from the 3 jewels that I have socketed on the tree. So in total, from the passive tree, I'm getting 6. From my gear, I'm getting 6 up to 12. And we are now only missing 3%, which I can get from socketables on my gloves, corrupt on my chest piece, or my endgame plan is to get in against the darkness jewel from trial, which will give us 5 to 6% maximum fire res. So already, there are fairly easy ways to go about playing Smith still in 0.3. That's ignore all of these nerfs to like the quality of life or like the gearing progression, right? They did not nerf the power of Smith of Kitava. It is still as strong as it was before. And not only that, it got stronger because you can now, instead of taking, the 5% max fire res, which people would swap off of anyways, you can now get 50% of your armor just applies to LE damage for free. You could swap that point around if you want to apply to chaos or reduce crits. It doesn't matter, but like there's now options for you to not always just mandatory. Like it's not mandatory to take this plus 5% max fire res node. So we've already gone through and done the ascendancy explainer, and today's video is going to be more of a little deep dive into Smith. But the thing I wanted to cover is this idea of hopefully I'm not baiting anybody, right? I think Smith of Kitava is really strong, but it's really strong defensively. There are 3 nodes that I haven't done full build guides on, and it's Manifest Weapon, or Living Weapon Against the Anvil, and Heat of the Forge. I think maybe I'll play a Monk to try to get a better understanding of how to use meta skills, and then come back and play Heat of the Forge in the future. Against the Anvil is just something that you can kind of empower skills with, and we'll see if I end up doing anything with this. But for me personally, the reason why I think Smith is really strong, fun, and really good in terms of progression is because swap this over to 0.3. Is because it allows you to incrementally improve your character's defenses outside of not based in RNG. What you're not going to get is, if I put out a build guide for a Smith, the ascendancy at all moving the needle for your damage. So if you want to play like a really low damage build that's like homebrew, you have your own skills for damage, and you just want to pick Smith for defenses, you might not have a good time. I put all of my work in 0.2 into figuring out the strongest bossing setup. I tried it again in 0.3 with all of the changes. It just got stronger. So everything that I put into last league about learning how to enhance rolling slam damage carried over, and I can just destroy every boss, right? That's not a problem. Damage is not a problem in this league. Whereas defenses also aren't really too big of a problem, but they don't, when it comes to like why there was such a harsh fall off from 0.2 to 0.3 for Smith of Kitava players, it's not explained in that value. There was no sharp decline in Smith power. There's a sharp decline in availability of maximum fire res, but for me personally, that just made it more fun to play the game, because now you don't just instantly cap out, and you have to progressively like build your character up until you get to a point where you're strong. If you've been watching my videos, why should you play Smith of Kitava versus something else like Titan? You should play Smith if you're somebody who is frustrated by dying a lot during campaign, is frustrated because you don't want to constantly be picking up gear off the ground and identifying it and hitting the exact mods that you need. The first 2 ascendancy points that you can get, basically capping out your resistances in Act 2, is super quality of life. You can go any of these 3 nodes, super handy. And then right after that, getting some physical damage reduction. Just insane for quality of life as you go through campaign. But again, as you can see, none of these nodes increase your damage. So you have to figure out a way when you're going through campaign to kill bosses. And there's nothing in this ascendancy right now that is going to help you do that easily, right? Temper weapon is strong. I think it's the only thing out of the box maybe you could invest in. So it would be something like, depending on what you're doing, maybe you take 2 points in resistances and then start messing around with the temper weapon builds. But for me personally, I didn't need to do that. I feel comfortable in the skills that I know can boss kill during the campaign. And the 2 of them are Rolling Slam and Perfect Strike. I went through and ran a Perfect Strike character recently, and I hate how the build plays at this point now. The only time I really liked it is when you could like one-shot with it. Having to use it 3, 4, or 5 plus times throughout a boss fight is actually not my favorite thing. So I primarily use Rolling Slam in the campaign in order to account for my ascendancy not giving me any extra damage, right? The reason why Rolling Slam is so strong in this aspect, let me pull it up. Rolling Slam has 2 hits. There's a first slam that is a good amount of damage. It has stun buildup, and then there's a second slam that has an insane amount of damage, as well as more damage multiplier on stunned enemies. And how I progress through the campaign is the goal is you set up a perfect one-shot kind of potential once you heavy stun a boss. You can do that with certain setups. So if I wanted to do like a really basic tree, I've shown this off time and time again, and this isn't anything, I'm not like trying to say like, wow, this is so unique. This is like baseline. If you're going a slam build, everybody should be doing something like this throughout campaign. Trying to think if anything else here is going to be good enough, but anyways, you can get to a point like this where Rolling Slam has 50% more. This is a 20% more for stunned. This is 18% chance for Aftershock. You could plug in another 25% or 20 to 30% chance to Aftershock. So you've got like a 50% chance for double damage. You're going to be plugging in a Warcry. And let me see when you get Seismic. Not actually sure when the earliest you can get Seismic, but Seismic is another guaranteed double damage. So essentially, there's just a way for you during campaign to focus on heavy stunning a boss into setting up. Basically, you look for Prime for stunned. You can weapon swap to dual wield two-handers. You could Infernal Cry, Seismic Cry to instantly stun, and then go into a double Rolling Slam, right? So you Rolling Slam twice on a heavy stunned enemy. The boss is already chunked. What does this have to do with Smith of Kitava? Basically nothing. You can do this on any warrior. You can do this on any class with a mace. It doesn't really matter. What I'm trying to say though is that if you look at this ascendancy thinking it's going to be incredibly strong offensively, that's just not the case. You need to know what other parts of the warrior class enable you to spend all of your ascendancy points in defenses and still do that amount of damage. In that way, I might look to put out a Smith of Kitava leveling guide. And I think maybe we could do like a 0 to 60 run on stream, where I just kind of incrementally go through, okay, I start in Act 1. We're looking at, Bone Shatter, like Rolling Slam Bone Shatter. We get through Act 2, and eventually we start adding on Leap Bone Shatter. Rolling Slam is still the boss killer. Just slowly progress through campaign that way. Eventually unlocking Hammer of the Gods so that you can kind of one-shot, etc. So I think I'll look to do that at some point before 0.3 is done. I know people like build guides as opposed to just this sort of incremental knowledge, but I primarily lean towards that because it's way easier on me personally. If I'm going to be putting out videos consistently, it's harder for me to do fully edited, fully vetted like build guides that people can like, oh, this build was shitty, I blame you, all that stuff. I just really enjoy understanding portions of the game, seeing where strengths and weaknesses lie, and then trying to like filter that through my lens so that you guys get the benefit. So what I will do is I'm going to post a spreadsheet down below, at least, so that there's something you can get out of this video other than me just kind of talking. That's just going to be a checklist of all of the maximum fire res or elemental res that is available on the tree, on items, on support gems, whatever situation there is that you can get maximum fire res, so that you can kind of use it as like a checklist if you're going through SSF or if you're just playing softcore and not looking to trade as much, in order to hit that 90% cap. And as always, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe if you like the content. I've been enjoying it. I'm going to keep this going, and I really hope GGG makes changes so that I can talk about more stuff in the future. But I'm really excited to try out swords and axes as they eventually add, hopefully, the Marauder and Duelist and all that good stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.